The In-Between, Chapter 3. The Crazy is Real. Truth is truth, no matter how you try to change it. From a note scribbled on a piece of parchment found in a crack in the floor of the Lincoln bedroom. Being somewhat familiar with ancient weapons and slightly better with historical parchments, I was stunned. The problem was these two items were not ancient at all. The sword looked like could have been made yesterday, and the parchment looked the same. There were the typical imperfections in the parchment paper itself, but no stains or fraying or deep yellowing like most parchments you typically see in museums. The wax seal looked fresh and even sort of had a sheen to it. It was ring embossed, as was a custom, of long ago. Stamped in the wax was a beautiful cursive letter M. To say I was confused is an understatement. Before opening the note, even if I would, I was going to check my security camera first from last night. I have motion sensor lights and cameras all over the place. Do I need to call the police? I thought. I better check the cameras before I touch this stuff or call anyone, I thought. But first, coffee. After pouring a cup of coffee, I made my way to the laptop I use for my security system. I fast forwarded the camera feed in the kitchen until I saw the sword and letter on the breakfast table. Slowly, I scrolled back the video to when these items first appeared. There was a sudden flash of light, and standing by the kitchen table with his back to the camera, a hooded person instantly appeared. A huge someone, 6.5 feet tall at least. He laid the sword and letter on the table and turned to face the camera. I spit coffee all over the laptop. After recovering from the shock, I cleaned the laptop as best I could with paper towels. I was fully awake. I switched to a bottle of water. Thankfully, the laptop was fine. This is why people smoke weed. It can't be him, I muttered to myself. I found the spot on the tape I was looking at earlier and zoomed in on the face. I played it again, stepping frame by frame. There he was, big as Dallas, the toughest, strongest, most loyal Marine I had ever known in my life, Sergeant Davies, platoon sergeant for 5th Marine Scout Snipers when I was there in 1982. Took me under his wing, kind of made a pet project out of me. I was a lowly lance corporal, but he was determined to make a good Marine out of me. I owe a lot of my success to that amazing man. Problem is, he's been dead since the Beirut bombing in late '83. I slowed the film down and played the section with his face enhanced. He winked and mouthed the words, "We need you, Captain." And then, just as he came, he was gone with another flash of light. Well, nobody's going to believe this, I said out loud. I have not thought of this man in forever. I loved him like a big brother. He was what we called a Marine's Marine, the absolute best of us. Give the shirt off his back for any of his Marines and chew your arse hard if you needed it. I've been on the receiving end of several of these arse chewings. Okay, this rules the police out, I thought. I had nothing that I had noticed that I had not drank the whole bottle of water and my foot was tapping fast. Nervous tick of mine, I guess. I headed back to the kitchen for another try at coffee. I stopped in front of the breakfast table and admired the sword and the letter. After viewing the security footage, I was even more afraid to open the letter, but it was my only hope of understanding what was going on, and maybe it would help me to stop thinking that I had gone absolutely batshite crazy. I picked up the letter. It felt new. I hated to crack the wax seal because it was so beautiful and unique, but that was the only way to read the contents. Slowly I bent the parchment and the wax seal broke. Carefully I unfolded the letter. This is what it read. My dearest uncle, I know this is a shock. My sincerest apologies. We are in such great need that I dared reach out to you in a physical way. The enemy has blocked most, if not all, our ability to contact you in dreams and visions as is our normal way. Knight Captain Davies volunteered for this dangerous mission. He is only a walker and not a dreamer like you and I, but the bravest of men and completely loyal. He remembers you fondly and was so proud to hear you had progressed in his beloved Marine Corps. He is one of my personal guards. You would be proud of him. We lost your dream self almost 20 years ago now. Oh, how I have missed you and your crazy and wonderful stories. Something tragic happened in your life that broke the ties between our worlds. But fate brought us together in your world so we were able to find you and contact you. There are no coincidences, Uncle. This was and is meant to be. I am sure of it. We need you. My father, our king, your oldest friend, has been captured by the evil that I will not name in this letter. You are the only one who has the light strong enough to save him. I know this is all strange and hard to believe. To make things even more odd, he begged me to say this, by the way. Hooch is here and is waiting for you. Yes, on this side, he can speak. We need you, Uncle. My father needs you. The kingdom needs you. Come back to us. Take the sword to where your heart lingers most. Dip it in the water there and concentrate on your dreams. We believe this will restore you to here. I so look forward to seeing you again. Signed, Princess Monique, acting Queen of Targamon. P.S. Hooch insists I tell you to think of him when you are concentrating at the water. Not sure if that will help. Chapter 4. The Real World. Maybe. Mom says crazy people need love too. The Water Boy. I read the letter 5 or 6 more times. Each time I went through the possibilities that this was a very elaborate hoax, or to the crazy notion that this was real, or to the very real possibility that I have finally lost it. But there was the video evidence, and the sword laying on my table, and the letter was in my hand. Then there were the dreams to consider. If this was not real, then what is real? I glanced at the kitchen clock. 7:30 a.m. Good. Target opens at 8. I'll get cleaned up and take the laptop and letter with me and show Monique. The sword will have to stay. I can't take a sword in Target. No, I can't. This was too crazy. She'll probably never speak to me again. Besides, if the roles were reversed, would I believe her? Probably not. But I would be impressed with the skill of whoever made the video, and the creation of the old style parchment paper alone is amazing. That is a lost art. Maybe 50 people in the entire world who could have made such paper like that now. I glanced at the sword. It looked beautiful and dangerous all at once. I decided to pick it up. Slowly I reached for the hilt. It was surprisingly light and heavy all at once. It felt comfortable in my hands. There was a familiarity with it, and a warmness radiating from the blade, and a faint glow, maybe. Suddenly I was doing practice moves with the sword, like really good ones that seemed natural to me. I've never practiced with swords in my life. When I realized what I was doing, I stopped suddenly. Crazy is as crazy does, they say. I put the sword down and settled in a chair and with the letter again. This must be real, I thought. What can it hurt to go to where my heart lingers and try? Just get it over with. Be done with this nonsense. Would be nice to see old Hooch again, I said aloud. A talking dog, I thought. Now that's crazy. But who do I know that knows me and Hooch? We lived in a completely different area back before he passed. Who would bring up a man's dead dog in a hoax? It's all crazy. I sat and pondered everything for another half hour and finally decided to go. I packed a bag, wrapped the sword up, and jumped in my car. My childhood hometown was a few hours away. There was a magical stretch of forest along a beautiful creek that was a place of many fond memories for me. I suddenly had a strong impression in my mind that this was all true. A peace came over me. I had a feeling that I was doing the right thing. It was all true, and my old friend needed help. I actually said out loud, "Hold on, my friend, I'm coming." As I entered my little hometown where I grew up a few hours later, I noticed the old diner was still there and a few cars were parked out front. A late breakfast sounded good to me. I walked in and triggered the bell on the door. The diner only had a few customers, but every one of them turned to look at me as I entered. I knew it was him as soon as we locked eyes. It had been almost 40 years since we had seen each other, but the old familiar tension from high school filled the air. "Well, look what the cat dragged in, boys," he said loud enough for everybody in the place to hear. I smiled and nodded at him and said, "Jerry, nice to see you." I chose to sit in the farthest booth away from him. "What, no handshake or bro hug for your old pal?" he said with a mock smile. "Jerry, I'm just here for breakfast and a short visit around town. I'll be gone in a couple hours. I don't want no trouble," I said, looking him straight in the eyes. "Trouble? We don't want to mess with no big bad Marine." He motioned to his two truck driver buddies sitting with him, both of which were getting up and making their way over to my booth. The bell rang again. Everybody looked to see who it was that strolled in. It was Big Gary, one of my very best high school friends and the town sheriff. "Well, bless my soul, little Mark, is that you?" Gary said with a huge smile. He doubled as a Baptist preacher. You could hear and feel his steps as the giant of a man walked over to my booth. Jerry and the other guys pulled down their hats and made their way to the door. Big Gary placed his hand on Jerry's chest and stopped him. You think God ain't watching? He sees everything. Even the fact that my good friend needed me to stop in here right at this moment. You run along now. I'll catch you later, Jerry," the sheriff said with a big smile as he let Jerry go. Turning to me, he said, "The prodigal son has returned." I stood and we hugged and shook hands. "I can't believe you didn't call me to let me know you was coming, Mark. You know I love to visit with you and see how what's going on in your life. Maybe talk to you about all that sinning that you always up to." He grinned and sat with me and ordered some coffee. "I know, Gary. Rather rude of me. It was a spur of the moment thing. I woke up feeling like I needed to go to the creek," I said. "Did you dream it?" he said, looking me square in the eye and seemed to already know my answer. Gary and I grew up on the wrong side of the tracks. I was a poor white family and Gary was from a poor black family. We lived across the alley from each other, close friends from the very beginning. His mother was a unique lady, always said Gary had the shine like his grandmother. I did notice that on rare occasions he would stop or freeze and seem like he was in deep thought or was having a dream or something. I would always follow with Gary knowing something was going to happen. Creeped me out sometimes, but saved my butt a time or two growing up. Almost forgot about your shine, Gary. Yes, I dreamed it, sort of. Brother, if I told you everything, you'd have to uphold the law and put me away, I said with a fake laugh while avoiding his eyes. Mark, I've been knowing you all your life. You about the best soul I know. My soul feels comfortable, happy even, sitting right here next to you, just like back in the day when we were kids. I trust you and I know you trust me. I know what you went through in the military and your marriage was some horrible stuff. But you got to remember who had your back all through junior high and high school, and I'm grateful you had my back, he said, kind of low so only I could hear. So when that trip down memory lane was over, spill it, little man, he said with a grin. There were few people in the world who could call me a little man and get away with it, and Gary was one of them. You got to promise to let me tell it all before you ask questions. This is going to be hard enough as it is. Plus, I got to take you out to the car and show you some things that pertain to what I'm talking about. Deal? I asked. Deal. I'm all ears, he said. I told him everything, the dreams, my target niece, the security video, the letter, the sword, everything. I even told him about old Hooch and talking. He raised an eyebrow on that part. Well, I wonder if you ain't caught the shine, brother, he said. Not like you, Gary. This is something different, I think. Heck, there's tangible stuff. Let me show you, I said as we stood up, paid the waitress, and made our way outside. Only thing I don't have with me is a security video, but I'll email that to you when I get back, I told him as I opened the trunk. I handed him the letter first. Read this first, Gary, I said, handing him the letter. As soon as Gary took that folded letter in his hand, he, he went still. He got that faraway look in his eyes. I have not seen this in 30 years, but I knew what was going on. He remained like that for at least 2 or 3 minutes. I was starting to worry. Thankfully, nobody was watching us. People tend to avoid the law. Finally, I took in a deep breath as his eyes was fluttering. It's all true what you told me, Mark. All of it, he said with a shocked look on his face. My grandma used to take me on long walks and tell me about a strange place. She called it the in between, where those that have passed go. They have a whole other life there. There was good and evil there, dark and light, she called it most of the time. There were special people, she told me, that could be on both sides. Dreamers, she called them, just like in the letter, he said with an amazed look on his face. How do you know what the letter says? You didn't even read it, I said. It's the shine. That kind of thing sometimes happens. What is more important, my friend, you and this niece of yours are dreamers. You need to get back your dream walking power. The in between king needs you as does that whole place over there. I know you went through hell some time ago and lost your abilities, but my brother, this has got to be done, he said with a serious look on his face. Guess I ain't crazy after all, I said. Oh, you crazy all right, but the good kind of crazy, he said and slapped me on the back. We laughed and talked a little more. I showed him the sword. He didn't want to touch it. That's your sword. It's a dreamer's sword, very rare and does not belong on this plane of existence. I'm surprised it's even here, or can even be here. Sure sign you got some work to do, he said, as if he was talking about something completely normal. Gary, you have helped me greatly. I always knew, even through the worst of times, there was something important for me to do before it's all over, I said as I looked at the sword. True for all of us, but you're right, especially true for you right now. I'll be praying for you. I'll have every godly man and woman I know pray for you. You're going to need it, he said. We hugged, and I promised to come see him as soon as I had something more to tell him. I've known some really bad men and some really good men, but very few like Gary, worth his weight in gold. And let me tell you, that's a lot of gold.